remembrance of the difficult seasons, of our darkest hours. To remember is to honor. To honor is to value. What we value shapes who we become. Throughout Scripture, God urges us to remember the sacrifices made, the freedom gained, the promises kept, the faithfulness of God. Through symbols and sacraments and holy disciplines, God has continued to urge us to always remember, because He knows what remembering does inside of us. Remembering gives purpose to our past by drawing wisdom, strength, and resolve from our pain and loss. Remembrance brings gratitude for those ordinary people who became extraordinary heroes. Remembrance strengthens community as we discover what God does through us when we are unified. Remembrance provides perspective of what God has done on our behalf in spite of our fears and worry. Remembrance reignites hope in what God will bring us through today and forever. Because God is faithful, even in our darkest hours. God is always there. Whatever we face today, whatever trial it seems we cannot endure, remember, God has always brought us through, and He always will. This is why we remember.
This hour of broadcasting brought to you by TwoWayRadioCenter.com, a Motorola value-added reseller. Welcome to the Church Safety and Security broadcast with the Church Safety Guys. Brought to you by Vigilant Impact. The Church Safety Guys is a nonprofit organization dedicated to equipping the vigilant, those men and women who stand watch, keeping our houses of worship and places of faith safe. We believe church safety and security must be a ministry first and have engaged, servant leaders who continually strive for excellence and teams of motivated volunteers that are always training. Join us for the next hour as the Church Safety Guys unpack safety, security, leadership, and ministry operations with your hosts, Dr. James McGarvey and Mike Scully. This broadcast is also available on YouTube, your favorite podcast platforms, churchsafetyguys.com, and on the original Church Security app. Download it today. Feel free to like, subscribe, and share with your ministry.
Well, hello. Welcome to the Church Safety and Security broadcast with the Church Safety Guys. I am James, and once again, I am joined by my co-host, Mike.
What's up, sir? How are you?
It is another Sunday.
That it is. And I can't believe it's September already. I feel like just yesterday it was like beginning of summer. But then as I was talking to you earlier this week, we're coming up on a year since our conference in Columbus already. Yep. And that was early October. And I'm like, it kind of blows my mind because it feels like it was a few months ago. That's how fast this last year has flown by.
It has. And I have a feeling that the rest of the year is going to fly by equally fast when I look at scheduling and everything else that's going on.
Exactly. There seems to be a lot
sure.
going on. Different. I mean, we're busier than we've ever been. I know that much with different trips. I know we have a assessment, site assessment we're doing end of the month. That's coming up. I know New England's on the map. I know we've already booked essentials for next year in March. So
Yep.
I mean that calendar's filling up.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And I will take the opportunity to plug the website. So if you are interested or curious where we are or what we're doing or looking for training or conference information, you're welcome to visit our website at churchsafetyguys.com. And if you click on the conferences and events section, there's a pretty accurate running tab of where we are, who we're doing stuff with, and what's going on. And so right now, tentatively, we have a workshop, half-day workshop planned in New Hampshire that I will be at, and then we also have the date has been penciled in for the Church Security Essentials. That's going to be in outside of St. Louis in O'Fallon in March of next year. And we don't have tickets available quite yet for that because the tickets are being hosted by by our host church that invited us out. But we are going to let you guys know when those are available, and you can go in and purchase tickets for you and your team. And certainly come out and meet us. We do have most of the lineup, I believe, and it will be Mike and I will be out there for a day, 1 day conference, and then John Riley will be joining us and going over de-escalation from general response, and then Dwayne Harris will also be joining us from Full Armor Church. And so really looking forward to having the opportunity to be with those guys again. And we're really pushing the idea, at least for the conference, is to be beneficial to churches that haven't started teams as well as, churches that have. So we have a wide range of topics that we're going to be going over and covering, and I'm pretty excited about the lineup for that. I think it'll be pretty good.
Well. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
given the showing as far as people engaging in Dallas last month, where we were able to go to the NOC SSM conference, the vast majority of folks, we saw a wide range of people that were interested in both the startup questions and just getting started. But there was also plenty of folks that came up to the table and really kind of wanted to talk more about, our coaching options and
Sure.
what does that look like on how we help them work through a challenging transition of a leader. They're opening another campus. They're adding another layer of leadership. What does that look like? Should they have an oversight pastor for this role? We've answered a lot of different questions, and it was a good cross section.
It was, and the reality is we, when you said we're as busy as ever, that is very accurate because we still have resources that we're putting out. In fact, we have a date, tentative date, October 3rd, for Equip, which is the newest ministry life cycle book, and I can tell you, Mike's laughing because he knows where I'm going with this. But I can tell you that I had, what was it? Actually, it was this week. I had knee surgery, and so I was kind of down on the couch with my tablet and typing, and pretty much at any time that Mike reached out to me and said, "Hey, what are you up to?" I was like, typing. I'm writing.
Well, it's good. I mean,
So,
I know this has been a longer gap between Engage and now Equip. I think that it took a little bit more time, but I think we really wanted to unpack this one more than I think we have in some of the others so far. I mean, this is the meatiest one we've written yet. It has the most to this stage or phase of the life cycle. So there's a lot here, and it meant that there's a lot to write about, and we want to make sure that we covered the right things in the right way and not just fill it up. I think there's some books that we've seen out there that are a little bit more filler and same sort of concepts, but this was really about unpacking the idea of equipping is more than just equipment, and that it is really about how do you prepare your team with the right skills and the right sort of demeanor and planning and structure so you can onboard them and be set up for success to then build a training program on top of. And so, of course, training comes out as the next one after Equip, which as we get this one out, that'll be next on our plate.
For sure. And, we have, a lot of other stuff going. We're hoping to have training out or train out in January. And we also have a couple of new devotionals we're working on and a few other really helpful resources. So definitely, visit our website and we'll post.
I want to mention the college degree program as well, because I think now's the time as we go into fall, people are thinking back to school and that sort of thing. But you may not always be thinking about that from a church security standpoint, but we do have a church safety and security program. It is both a option of a certificate, 1-year program, or a 2-year associate's degree. And so certainly as you're starting to think about that now towards the end of the year, enrolling for January would be a great time. Start out with the new calendar year, whether that's a New Year resolution or whether that's just realizing that, hey, you want to invest more in yourself. You want to invest more in what you're bringing to your team as a leader. It's a great opportunity for you to do so.
For sure. And it's designed from the aspect of understanding from leadership, and also for individual lay volunteers that maybe don't have the public safety background or information. But it's crafted well, and there's a lot of great content in that. So if you have any further questions on that, feel free to reach out to us, and you can do that through our website, and we're happy to get back to you as soon as we can. So of course today, remembering, I don't want to overlook it, but remembering September 11th, and our broadcast happened to fall on that day. And of course, if you were with us, you saw the video that we played at the beginning. We had a great today at church. We had a great video and discussion, and one of the gentlemen that's one of our elders at church spoke, and 2 of his sons are now in the military serving because of September 11th. And so he shared how that motivated them to serve. And what was interesting to me is I certainly didn't want to forget it. I remember it. I know you remember it. To us, for a younger generation, it strikes us as something as tragic as obviously as a president being shot or war, or, a lot of times I've heard people refer to it as like Pearl Harbor of, the modern time. And that's fine. I think I just want to say, I think it's important to remember and to reflect. And I was part of I'm part of another group on social media that is pastors and church planners, and they were talking about, someone posted, hey, should we do anything special today for September 11th? And it really disappointed me how many individuals and how many pastors came back and said, no, we're not doing anything. Don't hit that. One guy called it a hornet's nest. He's like, don't hit that hornet's nest. Don't talk about that. We don't need to. And then one guy, I was like, what's wrong with that? Like we're remembering heroes that sacrificed, paid the ultimate sacrifice and continue to do with the military for our benefit. And, this individual kind of came unglued and said, well, no, you need to keep the main thing. And I'm like, well, what's the main thing? And so then he jumped on me and he's like, well, Jesus is the main thing. And I said, I responded, to him and I said, well, I'm pretty sure that Jesus would have said to remember and to be grateful for those that sacrificed their lives like he did, because he did make the comment, greater love hath no man than this.
Yep.
And so I'm like, I think Jesus would be okay with that. And oh my goodness, this gentleman who was a pastor just came unglued and he's like, I can't believe you'd say that. You asked me if Jesus, what's the main focus and all this stuff. And I'm like, whoa.
Wow. Well, but that is a hornet's nest right there, is the idea that not 9/11, but really the fact that we have modern day pastors that are not necessarily preaching from Scripture. They're preaching from other books and not even attributing it. They're preaching from different sources, and it's that aren't even necessarily biblical in any sense, and passing it off. I'm like, there's so many different pieces. So that's a hornet's nest.
It is. And it was just interesting. One of the pastors, in fact, the pastor at my church asked me a couple of days ago, and he said, he's like, you come from a public safety background. What do you think? And, should we do something for September 11th? And I said, absolutely, without a doubt. Because, and again, I refer back to, and I've referred to this passage before, but I refer back to in the Old Testament in Joshua chapter 4, where, God commanded the Israelites through Joshua to build monuments and build memorials to show where they had been, to, remind them that's where we were, this is where we are now. And so, at the beginning of the broadcast, if you missed that video that we added, or that I added, I felt summarized my feelings on that very well, and that's why we added it. But so tonight, or on this broadcast, if you're listening at a later time, we are going to talk with Greg Hopkins, and Greg has graciously agreed to come back and join us again, and I'll bring him in here. So again, welcome, Greg. Thanks so much for hanging out with us.
Thank you for having me, gentlemen. Always glad to be on.
It's always a testament that when we have a guest that doesn't just that they wanted to come on, we have a guest that wants to come back, because that really says something.
For sure. But I will say that your reputation certainly precedes you, because I've had quite a few folks reach out to me and say, hey, what was that book that Greg wrote? So hopefully I was able to send them your way. But you, I'll just for those that might not know who you are, I'll mention real quick. You are a famous attorney in Alabama.
And I think notorious is more.
Oh, notorious. Okay.
In Ohio here, I'm probably in Ohio. No, I'm in Alabama. Sorry, folks. My senility is galloping. In Alabama, I'm the only attorney that I know of that actually teaches the law of self-defense, of concealed carry, of where you can go and where you can't go with a firearm, and how to conduct yourself after a use of force incident, and what to say, what not to say to the cops, and the psychophysiological effects of the use of force incident and why you are not a good witness for yourself right at the moment that it's over. So the I've been doing it since 1991. When I was city prosecutor that year, I was a Huntsville city prosecutor for 7.5 years. And part of my job was to train the police department on use of force. And from that, I developed the course that I developed for citizens. And since 2009, I've been training church security teams as well. So I have a little notoriety, and I have a book, and that's bought me probably the fame and wealth of the best ballerina in Galveston, Texas, I think. So I'm doing all right.
I'll hold it up there.
Yes, that's it. A Time to Kill, the Bible, and Self-Defense. I taught Bible for 40 years, and this was part of just a personal start out as a personal Bible study as to whether I could defend myself or not.
Interesting. I think I would almost say most of our resources started the same way, where we were just like, you know what, we have someone asking us about this, and if one person is asking, then maybe a few others are, and the rest is kind of history. So
sounds really familiar.
Yeah.
So basically, I warn people it's a Christian gun nut lawyer's interpretation of the Bible, but I try to show that one of the things that secularism is trying to bury in our country is the Christian base of this country's founding, and I show. I talk about the kidnapping statute in my state, and when I talk about Moses killing the Egyptian, the assault statutes and so on, and burglary statutes and so on and so on. So trying to weave it all together.
For sure. And you do a fantastic job of that. It is very, very inclusive, and reading through it, you don't leave any to question, because there have been a few times where I've used it as a resource, and I've had folks reach out to me and say, well, what about this or that in self-defense? And I had a few years ago, I had the opportunity to teach some missionary pilots how to use firearms and go through some training. And we were all done. We were wrapping up for the day. And one of the pilots actually asked me, he said, so what would you say to answer this? We're supposed to be witnessing to people and evangelizing, but you just trained us all in firearms and how to defend ourselves. And so it was funny. It kind of took, the question kind of took me by surprise, because I wasn't expecting them to ask me that. But ultimately, I was able to go back through and offer some scripture references and put it in context. But I love how you've done that. You've gone from the Old Testament to the New Testament, and just kind of walked through some of those verses, and just giving, and also have given very practical examples, along with just different stories and illustrations from your life and your personal experience on why that's important, and what the Bible says on it. So definitely a great resource. And I always like to encourage folks, if you haven't picked up a copy, to do that. One of the things that I noticed, and every time I read it, I get something different something positive different out of it. But one thing I just noticed not too long ago was you have a section in the front of the book that talks about having a heart of gratitude. And that really impressed on me, because Mike and I talk about that all the time as a foundation for serving and a foundation for our leadership models and, doing church safety and security from a ministry perspective. So, seeing that, it encourages me, and I always love it when we connect with folks that are like-minded in that way.
Well, in your book, James, in your safety and security book for churches, you hit upon something that I totally missed when I wrote the book, and it was the fact that God actually introduces the responsibility of self-defense in the Genesis with Adam and
Sure.
Eve. And this is really important because from the very, and it also has to do with the attitude of gratitude.
Sure.
Is when God told Adam to tend the garden and keep it, that keeping has to do with preserving and protecting.
Sure.
And it is so he had the responsibility to defend, which means he fell down on his responsibility because he let Satan get to Eve, and he should have been the first one to encounter the serpent, and he should have been the first one to throw him out bodily, but he failed in that. But and perhaps it's a failure of gratitude, and maybe it's because it's kind of like I say, the only reason babies eat baby food is they don't have anything to compare it to. Is it's the same thing with Adam and Eve. I mean, they've got this perfect life, and they have nothing to compare it to. And
For sure.
perhaps Adam was not properly grateful, simply because he didn't have. But here's the other side. if you mess up. But in any case, the attitude of gratitude is what. If I just had a fellow yesterday, I was talking to. He's the leader of our local Bama Carry group, and he said he was in a discussion with some people, and he said, "Look, when I go out armed, he says I'm not just armed for myself. I'm armed for the lady in the next aisle on Kroger's as well." And
Sure.
we are armed and prepared in order to serve. And some people don't quite get the idea that service might be having to take a bad guy out, hurting him or actually killing him. But this morning, when I walked into church, I went up to one of the security people, and I trained this unit about 4 years ago, and started talking. I said, "Do you have any extra things going on for 9/11?" She said, "No, as a matter of fact, the regular head of the team today wasn't here, and I'm the backup, and I've got only 2 people here besides me." And now we're talking about 500 people coming in for 2 services,
Sure.
500 at each service, and they've only got 3 people to cover that day. And this is we know from U.S. security and law enforcement sites that radical terrorists have targeted is one of their major targets is churches, and they like to hit on anniversaries, and
Absolutely.
those are the times that we need to think about. How grateful am I for all these great people at church, and what would I like to do to thank God for them? And some of us preach, and some of us teach, and some of us stand guard at the doors. So.
Amen. And I love that reference back to Genesis as well. And I think some look at it in the interpretation of it is to work it and watch over it. And so that watch over is that protection of individuals of ourselves, of Adam and Eve in the garden, but literally all that God has given, we are tasked and have the responsibility and duty to watch over it. And so that it is not taken over by evil hands. It is meant to be watched over. So watching over in a true sense is then, if we extrapolate that further, the word watch over or guard or protect, we can find elsewhere in the Bible as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For sure. And, there's other passages, certainly, in Scripture that I come across, or that I know I've used several times, but I think the one that comes to my mind at the moment is Romans 12 and 13. And it's, the Apostle Paul is saying very specifically that that we need to be hospitable to others, and that we need to care for others, and we need to have that mindset. And throughout the New Testament, there's many different exhortations to the New Testament church saying that what, if you don't care, if you don't provide, if you don't do the best you can to help individuals, then you're worse than an unbeliever. And in some cases, we seem to miss that, and I'm not sure. I think honestly, sometimes we miss it because we think that it should look different than today than it did maybe back in the Apostle Paul's time. And maybe that does look a tiny bit different as far as hospitality and what that is and that sort of thing. But the reality is we have an obligation to be able to reach out in our community and protect those that are around us. And the idea, like you said earlier, Greg, of, when I go to the store and go grocery shopping, I do. When I leave my house, I usually have a firearm on. That's just in my habits. That's one thing that I do. And, you're absolutely right. It's not always for me or my family that I'm with. It's, it has that ripple effect where it goes to those that are around me. And if I happen to go, to the grocery store and something crazy's going on, then, I pray for wisdom and knowledge to make the right choices and do the right things, and, and help others as much as I would want to protect myself and my family. Yes. And I think that when we look at the church as a whole, I think we've seen amazing strides in the last 5 and 10 years for churches to be more prepared. But we still have a long ways to go with embracing that, that ideology that, we have a responsibility to take care of people that come to us and that are in our community.
Mike, were you going to follow that up? It looked like you were going to say something.
Well, I had another thought. I was going to go in a different direction. I was going to leave space in case it was going to stay there. But I think, too, is looking at it also from a standpoint of, as leadership of a church or as security leaders in a church, we are in a form of governing authority in that position. And that authority has been blessed by leadership of that church, has been blessed in the word itself to watch over. And so when we're acting responsibly in that responsibility, we are doing so as that governing authority. And of course, the Bible speaks to submitting to that rightful governing authority as well. So we're operating within that range as a duty to protect, as a watching over, but also the flock has that duty also to essentially submit to the governing authority in that sense, which is when they're worshiping or participating in that given church, they're in that set of rules, policies, guidelines, and structure up and until it might be a situation where first responders are involved, etc. And that's where, like James and I have talked about it before, is you got an incident. Well, then you have incident command. Well, you then may pass that incident command structure over to first responders when somebody arrives on scene. So it's a progression where even that governing authority shifts over time based on the severity or level of incident.
Excellent point. That's a good point. The Paul, when he was saying his goodbye to the Ephesian elders, he told them, to protect the flock. Now he was specifically talking about, protect them from false teachers and false teachings. But at the same time, there is that responsibility. Mike makes you that makes me remember what my dad said to my wife to be and I about a week before our wedding. He said, being a husband is kind of like being an elder. It's not so much a position of authority as it is a position of responsibility, and it means that we need to be reasonable with the people that we're working with, and help teach them what needs to be done. One of the things is protection, definitely.
Absolutely. And I noticed that you one of the stories that you shared in your book, Greg, was about your dad working a long distance away and your mom getting a phone threat.
Mm-hmm.
And I that really resonated with me because my dad, growing up, my dad always used to work third shift, and
Oh.
so when he went to and he would work probably 40-minute drive away.
Mm-hmm.
But whenever he left, he would leave at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and
Mm-hmm.
he would tell me, he would say, hey, there's a 38 up on the beds, headboard of the bed. He always had a box up there
Mm-hmm.
with that, and it was loaded, and it always had extra rounds in it. And
Mm-hmm.
he would say, as he was leaving, he would give me a hug and say, "Hey, keep an eye on your mom. Look after your mom. That's your job." And then, he would leave. And I don't think to this day, I don't think I've had a conversation with him about how impactful that in my mind that was, because to me it was prioritizing the value of taking care of your home and being responsible and
Right.
understanding, look, you're, and my dad would say it, you're the man, you're in charge, and it was never done in some, you know, I don't know, anti-discriminatory way or sexist way. It was just, guess what? I'm not here. You're in charge of the house, and your responsibility ultimately is make sure that your mom stays safe and everybody else stays safe. And so, and that's something that, from a family standpoint, we've tried to pass on as well, to our kids, that you have an obligation to protect those in your home, and thankfully we still have the ability to defend ourselves and do that. And from a biblical standpoint, that carries over to the church as well, and having an obligation and a responsibility to protect those around us, at church. So
But when Jesus said do unto others as you would want them to do unto you. I mean, think about that. And whatever I wish done to me, I ought to do for others. And it's that attitude of gratitude for having a mom, for instance, that you say, yeah, she's pretty special. I need to protect her, and she would want to be protected. And it's when we, and of course, do unto others actually comes from Leviticus 16:18, where it says, "You shall love your neighbor as yourself." Well, that means that if my neighbor's house is on fire, I need to turn my hose on it, on his
sure.
house, and if someone's breaking into his house, I need to help him out. Or if his car has a flat tire, I need to help him fix it, whatever that happens to be. So we, you know, I think it helps us refocus our idea of the necessity of self-defense if we continue to think about how grateful we are to God for the people in our life.
It's definitely an interesting perspective. I hadn't necessarily thought of. I think a lot of times I think of gratitude as being more your direct relationship
Mhm.
with God, but at the same time, I mean, there's plenty of scripture references about children being a blessing and a gift, And so if that connects, if we're connecting the dots, then you would have to say that. You would have to say, okay, you know what? For me being grateful, I have the responsibility to take care of and protect, and I think to an extent, I think we've been seeing a lot of that too, where Mike and I have talked to a lot of churches lately that have had more, like in coaching and different things like that, have had more mental health concerns and different aspects of attitude and cultural influences and different things like that. And I think usually what we base it on when we talk about like our leadership model is that the reality is, having a heart and attitude of gratitude is a foundational concept. And when you have that, and that's established, then a lot of times you're filtering everything through that. At the same time, that demonstrates a value, because when we, as individuals, when we get depressed a lot of times, or when we run into problems, or we have issues with people or whatnot, oftentimes when I experience that, I look at, what's my relationship with God like? How is my relationship? Because how my relationship is with Him is going to affect and impact everything else. And so from that standpoint, when I run everything through that filter, oftentimes I can see that, my relationship with God isn't really where it should be, because I'm responding in this way, or I'm making these choices. And so from a perspective of the church and mental health, I think a lot of times when we don't realize that we have that value, and what's that value? Well, the value is that God sent His Son for us to have a relationship with us and to take care of our sin. From that standpoint, we have value in God's eyes because He chose to do that. And so when I recognize, when I come to God and I'm grateful and I have that attitude of gratitude, I'm recognizing the value that He placed in me, not of myself, but all of a sudden, I'm realizing, okay, wait a second, I do have value, and that boosts me, that helps me to get through whatever I'm getting through, and gives me hope to be able to say, you know what, I can handle this in this direction, because because God sees me as this, at this level. It doesn't matter what's going on. So, but
I'm going to add another element to it. Is not, we talk all about the attitude, the gratitude, but there's also aptitude. And I think in the world of church safety and security, the aptitude, the potential somebody has, the desire or fitness for purpose the person then has to serve in the capacity as a protector, is a duty that we as leaders have to look at. We have to understand, is that person a fit for this type of a role? Can they do the duty that is necessary? And we do also find that those that are suited for it still may have that mental health challenge. And I think we're seeing more of that happen as you get churches that are having to deal, maybe not necessarily with a shooter, although that's, of course, what everyone is pushing, is that active shooter. But it really is, even in, you have a really tough medical situation. You have a really tough evacuation. You had a fire call or whatever it might be. And you have some of these leaders they're crumbling under the weight of the stress and the anxiety of actually dealing with a crisis moment. Is that while they are in that for the moment, they're not necessarily equipping themselves or preparing for that, the consequential moment where they might have to respond. And that's a difference as well. So having the right attitude, also with the aptitude, but also that gratitude. So I think there's all three.
And that's right. That's right. Yeah.
For sure. Well, one of the questions, and I'll throw it over to you, Greg, but one of the questions that we get asked a lot, and I don't want to miss it, because I want to hear what from your book, what you have to say on it. But oftentimes folks will say, well, why just the standard question, why would you have a safety team? Or we kind of talked about the fundamentals of that and protecting and that sort of thing. But I love in your book, because you cover the topic of Jesus being a pacifist. And if you would just kind of jump into that a little bit, and because oftentimes we'll have people say, well, Jesus never carried a sword, or Jesus always said, love your enemies and treat people different. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, the question is often said, well, Jesus carry an AR-15? It's kind of like, all right, you people have your WWJD wristband. What would Jesus actually do? Well, it's the thing is that first of all, we have to understand that Jesus was a person with a divine mission. And as long as he kept to that divine mission, he was going to accomplish it. And there were all kinds of things and people that were trying to pull him in this direction, that direction. But in order to complete that divine mission, he could do certain things. He could heal the sick, for instance, simply by a touch, or even by a word at remote distance. And so we say, okay, my kid's got a compound fracture from being run over by a big kid in a soccer game. All right, so can I heal him? Well, it's probably not going to happen. So, but I can take him to the ER at 100 miles an hour and throw him on a gurney and let a doctor do it. And that is part of the way that God has provided for us, is to allow us to have inquiring minds that can understand his world, and we can have science and things like that. I use the example of I was a lifeguard for 7 years, high school through college and after, and what happens if a guy is drowning 100 yards from shore? Well, if I am right now, if I don't have a boat to go get him, I just wave bye-bye, because it's one of the first things you learn in lifeguarding is don't get two people drowned going out and doing something stupid. But what would Jesus do? Well, he could part the water. He could walk on the water to the guy. He could fly over and just grab him, but we can't do that because we are not Jesus. Jesus was under divine protection. So they tried to kill him. How many times does it say that? And they moved to arrest him or kill him or whatever, and he just
wasn't his time. Yeah, absolutely.
And, they even sent the temple guard to get him, and they came back and said, "Here, come. Well, where's Jesus?" So he told him, "We never heard anybody talk like that guy, man. You got to listen to him." And of course, they were got in trouble. But the point here is that Jesus had a mission, and he didn't have to use those kind of things. Now, when he wanted to teach a lesson about a bad example, which was cheating the people at the tables in the outer court there, the court of the Gentiles, Jesus got physical with them. So at some times, Jesus said, we can do something like this. But people say, well, Jesus actually, he didn't have to. He didn't need to. And especially in the garden, he had to go as a willing sacrifice. If he had fought or allowed any of the disciples to fight, then it would have messed up the whole situation. And so when we come to it, he says, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth." The Greek there implies it is not a person who's very mousy and refuses to get involved with anything. It is an image of a highly trained war horse. Think of Alexander the Great's Mount Bucephalus. The war horses can be very gentle when they have to, but when they're sent into battle, they will actually bite the enemy. They will use their hoofs to kill or injure. They'll fight just like their masters will. Or a well-trained hunting dog. It means someone who is so engulfed in surrendering to God's will that they'll do anything God asks him for a certain thing. That's what Jesus meant by weak. And so when you work through the Beatitudes and you get to the next part where he talks about being angry with someone and so on, and then he talks about uh, agree with a person before you get to court and forgive. I'm sorry, get to the courts later. Would forgive someone before you leave your offering. Then he talks about divorce. It's not that he's skipping from subject to subject. This is all about how we're supposed to treat people, because when you get up to Matthew 7:12, and he says, "Therefore, whatsoever you would have men do to you, do to them also." All right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, every time you see "therefore," then you need to look at the context of what the speaker is saying, the last few paragraphs, chapters back, and say, what is it there for? He was talking the whole time about how God wants us to treat people as we would want to be treated. And so you get to the part where he says, if a man slaps you on his right cheek, well, what he's talking about there is relationship. He's not talking about someone who jumps out of an alley with a butcher knife and says your money or your life. He's saying that it is the person who insults us. The reason I say this is because he says if someone smites you on the right cheek, well, to smite you on the right cheek, he's got to use his left hand. And long before Jesus, in the Middle East and the Mediterranean, even the Greeks, you use your left hand to wipe your bottom. All right. So it's clear that, and the slap like this in Hebrew culture was used against a slave who was being smart alecky or uppity, or a teenager doing the same thing. It was not an attack in order to actually wound, but to embarrass. See.
Sure.
So when we got that boss that you never can do anything right, when you got the little old lady in the choir that is always griping about your daughter, her skirts are too short, and her her makeup, all this kind of thing, that's back in those situations. Now, we go on down. You see, he says, you agree on court thing, and then comes to go the second mile, and the situation there is that back then a Roman soldier could make someone carry his pack. They were very heavy. They were maybe 60, 70 pounds, like a soldier's build out today, and a Jew had to do it. Now, if I'm the Jew, and I say, hey, my name's Joshua. What's your name? Marcus. Okay. Hey, where are you from in Italy? Brundusium. Oh, I hear that's a happening place. Hey, you want to hear a joke? The Pontifex Maximus and the high priest walk into a bar. And the whole time, this Roman's thinking, yeah, I know what you guys think. You call us goyim. That means cattle. For crying out loud, man, as soon as we hit that milestone, you're going to drop my pack and run like I've got the plague. As you little hypocrite. Okay. See, if we do anything, even if we claim to do it for God, under compulsion, under the law, under something someone makes us do. Now, think again, jobs, our jobs, our bosses, all this kind of, there is no witness. Why? Because the boss says, well, he's afraid I'm going to fire him. That's why he won't. And just like the Romans said, he's afraid of my sword and the law. You see, but if we hit the second mile and I say, Marcus, I think I'm getting my second wind. Mind if I go along? I said, I just like to know you better. I'm no longer under compulsion, and now a witness occurs because he knows I'm here for him and for Jesus, not for any other reason, you see. And so Jesus was he was trying to teach us that that point about turning the other cheek, that we can only by turning the other cheek we gain that witness, and maybe not to the person that just slapped us, or said something nasty, but to anyone watching and anyone who hears about it, we are a witness to them. And that's where the witness begins. Now, Jesus was not a pacifist because, for instance, he endorsed killing a burglar based on excuse me, Exodus,
Thief in the night.
and I just forgotten the chapter completely. Exodus 22, verse 3. If a thief is found breaking in, then he can be killed at night. And so Jesus he used some analogies about binding Satan. But look at the analogy he used, something that every Jew would get because they knew that it was common sense. And he says, so if you want to enter a strong man's house, you must first bind him, you see. Or you're not going to get in. He's going to prevent you. Is the subtext. If you look in Luke, he says, but if a man comes in and he binds the strong man, he will take his arms and armor. Okay, so the strong man is not only strong, but he will be armed and he may have defensive armor. And as Masad Ayub told us in class one day when I took his course, he said, you got to figure if you're going to be sending bullets in a situation, you're sending bullets outward, there's probably going to be some bullets coming inward, so you might want to think about armor. But the point here is that Jesus did not ever say, don't hurt nobody for no reason, for any reason. It's right. He was telling us to, be on God's side, but sometimes there are just evil things that we cannot meet in any way except with countervailing force.
For sure. Well, Mike, do you want to go ahead and wrap up? Because I know we're kind of running out of time, unfortunately.
Last couple minutes here. I think really one of the references that has always struck me is really kind of that wisdom comes from heaven. So in James, and you're really talking through that discernment, that idea of we don't want to ever act in a vengeful or spiteful way, that retaliation itself would be bad, but acting in defense of, not in offense of, to your point of turning the other cheek. I think that's where it comes, is that we in that role and as a protector, standing watch, holding that responsibility, need to always make sure that we're praying for that wisdom and that we are embodying that, so that if we are called to act, that we're doing so in the right realm.
And see, an act of self-defense will always be an emergency panic situation, because the bad guy, has the privilege of the first move, and that's one of the reasons. So we need to pray before we're in these situations that God will give us wisdom, like you said, because the sorry, you got me inspired, Mike, and then I lost it. Hang on. I'm sorry. This is why. I got it again. In my classes, one of the things I do, which a lot of instructors don't do, is I make sure when I go through the 10, 15 different crimes in which deadly force can be used, and then when I talk about non-deadly force, I say, all right, this is where this crime ends. I said, well, you mean if the robber grabs my wallet and then he turns around and runs, I can't pull my gun then and shoot him in the back? No. No. I said, well, the guy's stealing my car and I walk out of my house, I can't shoot him as he drives down? No. It's over. Incident. If you catch a guy trying to rape your daughter, and you come in with your gun and he jumps out the window with no pants on, you can't stitch 10 rounds of 9mm up his back to teach him a lesson. It's it's just ridiculous. But see, people don't even know that. They and that's where we can get into the idea of well, I'm going to teach them a lesson. That's what the justice system is for. It's not our job to teach them a lesson. It's our job to preserve, protect, and defend. But if we don't know where legally we're supposed to stop, it's very easy to fall into, well, he needed killing.
For sure. Well, we're pretty much out of time, and so we definitely need to wrap stuff up. But as always, Greg, I really appreciate you coming on here and joining us. And I will do another shout out. So the book that Greg wrote is A Time to Kill, and
so on Amazon, just Greg Hopkins, A Time to Kill, you'll find it. And
Yep.
If you like it, I'd appreciate you doing a review for me.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely pick up a copy, and there's some great talking points in it, great references, and Greg takes a sometimes dry topic and adds a lot of flavor to it through stories and personal examples and that sort of thing. So you definitely don't want to miss it. So.
Well, thank you, brothers. I really am gratified that you all asked me on. I'm glad to be here anytime, and please pray for your ministry and
appreciate it.
Work. Okay.
Appreciate that.
Awesome.
Good to see you, Greg. Thank you.
All right, so real quick, we'll wrap up, but just want to say if you are in New England, for our New England folks listening, visit our website at churchsafetyconference.com, and you can pick up tickets to our workshop, which is coming up in October, Columbus Day weekend, so it would be October 8th. And we have a unique format that we're trying for that, but it's going to be a great morning going through setting up a safety team. Very limited. We don't have many tickets left. I think we may have about 20, and that's about it because it is very limited and the venue is very small. But if you have any questions, you can reach out to us through our website at churchsafetyguys.com. or churchsafetyconference.com, and you can actually reserve your ticket there. So until next time, have a great week. Take care. God bless. We'll talk to you soon.
This hour of broadcasting brought to you by TwoWayRadioCenter.com, a Motorola value-added reseller. Thank you for joining the Church Safety Guys broadcast, brought to you by Vigilant Impact. We hope that you found it informative, and we appreciate your feedback and interaction. Be sure to share our broadcast with your teams, join the discussion online, and connect with us on social media. For other great ministry resources, download the Church Security app or at our website at churchsafetyguys.com. Remember, keep a servant's heart, a mindset of ministry, and Semper Disciplina. Always be training. Have a blessed week.